Welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and happy Friday afternoon, happy spring, and certainly glad the weekend is here. I'm excited this afternoon. We are going to talk to Superintendent Glenn Robbins. This is his brand new book, I Won't Back Down. If you're an educator, if you're a leader, and certainly, we grew up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, music, right? Oh, my God, we're going to talk about music and leadership. So we'll meet Glenn in just a moment. If you are watching the show live, jump in and say hello. You have a question for Glenn and I, and we will be with Glenn in just a moment. A quick word from IXL, today's sponsor.
I'd like to thank IXL for sponsoring today's podcast. Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classroom every day. IXL is the most widely used online learning and teaching platform K through 12. It empowers schools with complete curriculum, thousands of instructional resources, robust reporting, assessment data, and more. It saves teachers a lot of valuable time with ready-made plans aligned to the standards and the textbooks. Built-in engagement tools like custom competitions make learning fun for students. And IXL's diagnostic is research proven to be a strong predictor of performance on standardized assessments. And the best part, everything I just mentioned is all integrated into one platform, so you can simplify your EdTech tools. Visit IXL.com to lead your students towards data-driven excellence today. The link is in the show notes. And again, appreciate IXL sponsoring today's podcast.
All right, let's get started, friends. The opening concept here is all the ideas aren't taken. I heard Andy Andrews, a speaker. I was at an event in down south in Georgia, and Andy Andrews was the other speaker, and I did not know Andy. He was fantastic, and one of the things he said, it just landed on me, all the ideas aren't taken. Sometimes, whether we're a teacher, a superintendent, we might say, well, somebody else did that. Another school did that. Another person wrote a book like that. Well, it wasn't your book, right? It wasn't your fresh ideas and fresh looks on things. And I don't know, I found that very refreshing, that all the ideas aren't taken. So whatever it is you're thinking about, right? Maybe it is a book you're writing. Maybe it is a marathon you want to run. Maybe it is that thing that you want to do. Go do it and put your own twist on it, put your own spirit and heart into it. And again, I thank Andy for that. But let's meet Glenn Robbins from Brigantine, New Jersey on a busy Friday afternoon. Glenn, welcome to the program, my friend.
Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate the intro and glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to be with you. I know it's a busy time and I had to move it, so I appreciate your flexibility in making it happen. Glenn, I wore my special shirt today. It's not everybody I can ask how you doing, but how you doing on this beautiful Friday?
We're doing good, cuz we're doing good, right? Northeast joke there for those that are not familiar with that.
Yeah, coming from the Jersey Shore, beautiful Brigantine, New Jersey. Glenn, it's an honor to talk to you. You heard me talk about all the ideas aren't taken, and again, this is Glenn's new book, I Won't Back Down. What a great idea, Glenn. Music, being told no, rejection, and education in a beautiful combination. let's get started on the podcast with the idea for this book. Where'd you get the idea from?
You know what? That's a great question. I was mulling on it for a while, just marinating and so forth. And, look, let's be perfectly honest. Music is the greatest time and closest time machine that we have, right? There are some days we hear the music. There are other days we hear the lyrics. But we also, Andrew, I know if I played a song right now, you'd be like, all right, I was driving in my car doing this, or I was reffing a game before, whatever it may be. It takes you back to something. It relates to you. And for me, it's like, all right, I grew up at Columbia House. I probably still owe money for all the CDs. But I would, back then there was no cell phone. So it was like you're reading inside and outside the labels. You were fascinated by these musicians. And then, you know what, like many others, I've had triumphs and tribunes along the way and rejections and so forth. And I said, I know I'm not alone in this. And recently, for the past couple of years, I work and mentor a lot of aspiring superintendents across the country. And, they're talking about some stories they were sharing with me were really hitting home. And for me, it was like, all right, how do I try to tie something in and maybe boost them up a little bit? So I thought about music and then read some stories here and there about some rejections. One of them, I actually have the music poster of the concert on my wall as a reminder about, the work environment and what I'm creating as a content reminder for me. And I said, let's put something together that maybe, people can relate to. And then at the end of the book, I put together a QR code so everybody can just zap on, and then there's a playlist so they can just listen to the music that, these people who have been rejected and, jazz you up a little bit. So excited to share some of the stories. And I even shared each chapter as a vulnerability story that I shared. It was very difficult to share some of them. Some I didn't want to share, some I did want to share, obviously. But the editor that I have was amazing, and she kept pushing me forward to do that.
Yeah. Congratulations. Just came out. It's on Amazon. The link is in the notes. And Glenn, another part in the book I loved is, write your own lyrics. You tell a story of a musician. You tell a story of you, but then you ask for some reflection in our own leaders because it's something we can all relate to. So well done with that part in the book.
Yeah, I figured that was, besides the story, then my story, it also gives lessons for the educators based on the scenario that I'm talking about, whether it was rejected from a job and or told no by a boss and or, passed over internally or whatever it may be, or your work environment. And it's just some tips of the trade, like what you could do. But I think the reflection is something we all do not do enough. We hear it all the time saying reflect and think about that. That's what great leadership's about. But, I also wrote it so like if you sat down with yourself, you're reflecting yourself. If you sat down with your team, then, you reflect with them. But I think that's a really great thing that helps us grow is when we take a couple minutes and say, what could I have done better? What can I do differently? And how do I continue to grow? So yeah, writing my lyrics was a cool little way of reflecting in a music book.
Yeah. Glenn, you're a busy guy. I know you have something with your kids tonight and superintendent, you have a lot going on. Talk to me about your writing process. When and how do you do it? What are you on the laptop in a coffee shop? When and how do you make the time to write?
Yeah, it's usually when the kids are asleep. So I have a 13-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. So they keep me quite busy the second I get home, right? So there's no off time, constantly doing things with them. I have an amazing wife, Abigail, who does so much for me. But I actually wrote, we did Common to Chaos, my co-author before my first book that came out a year ago. And then over the summer, I just sat down and was on my phone and was just typing in Google Docs and just pounding out notes and so forth. And I actually wrote 2 books over the past summer, when the kids were sleeping. So I Won't Back Down was the first one I released, and probably next year or the year after, depending on when I want to go forward with it, needs some revisions and so forth. But yeah, I heard a quote before from Robert Greene, and Ryan Holiday would say it all the time, especially during COVID. There's a lot of time in dead time, so, we all have the same amount of time during the day. How do people do so many different things? Some people just say, I don't have enough time. Well, it's priorities. So I use it as a live time. Like every second I can do something, I'm moving forward, I'm doing something instead of just being dead time, which is doing nothing and vegetating in front of a TV,
Awesome. Really good for you. You dedicate just to your wife, the book, just to your wife. And that's a really nice shout out there. Glenn, just one question from the book. I mean, we could talk the whole time about the book, but I love the part about the fit. You write about Jimi Hendrix. He gets an opening with the Monkees. The Monkees were at the height of their career, and Jimi Hendrix was coming up, and they literally booed him off the stage. Jimi Hendrix, one of the best guitarists and musicians ever, but it just didn't fit. Talk to me about that concept and why'd you include it in the book. And I just thought that was such a clash there. So tell me about that concept.
Yeah, so talk about class. So when I explain that to younger people in today's day, they're like, who's that and who's that? I'm like, all right, that's a boy band with like a heavy metal band, like opening up. They just don't mix, right? So let's be honest. I've been passed over on jobs. I've been told that, I wouldn't be good enough to be a principal or a superintendent one day. And I think about that. Like, what if I would have stayed in that particular district? Who would I be today? What type of educator would I be? What kind of human being would I be? And instead, I said, you know what? This is not the place that sees the value in me. And I went and found places that saw the value in me. So similar to Jimi Hendrix, could you imagine, Andrew, if he listened to the critics? Like, where would music be today? This man was arguably the greatest guitarist of all time, or top 5 in some people's categories. But he listened to people at the height of the era of 1967 boy band, and that's the poster I have up with Hendrix opening up for the Monkees.
Wow.
2 completely different, contrasting people, music. Jimmy's vision and what he thought he could put out wasn't being heard by the right people. And if he would have quit, what would have happened? If he would have stayed with what he was doing, what would have happened? So the fact that he left, and I equate this like almost like a toxic work environment. You have to move on sometimes. You're not rooted anywhere. You're not a tree. Get up and move. So instead of complaining about it, and he did suffer a little bit through this because it was a hit to the ego, but he went up and eventually moved overseas to Great Britain. And that's when he really caught fire and the right people heard him. And we know what happened. Jimi Hendrix went on a whole different trajectory. And the Monkees started to disband, right? And then eventually one started MTV, which was kind of cool. I look at it like that from that work environment. You're not being pushed to where you could be, someone seeing the greatness in you instead of seeing what they truly see is like the negatives in you, and or you don't fit their scheme. And you and I both know that, my friend. There are some people that see value in it, others that do not see value in it. And you need to be with those people that lift you up, see the greatness in you before you see it sometimes, and help you realize the great things you can do to move forward, right? And that's ultimately what I try to do as a superintendent now. Like, my giving the right experience, the right environment for my staff, to continue to flourish forward, with all their creative differences, and allow them to see the strengths can be such an amazing thing instead of criticizing and putting down weakness. So that was why I enjoyed writing that chapter. Because I know there are so many different people, especially in today's day, with chaotic board meetings, with critical, crazy political things going on today. Are you truly in the right place? Or is it time for you to move on and think differently? And I found the great place that I'm at now, because I had to move around here and there, and I'm blessed and thankful I did that, and I can appreciate it more too. Think about that. The struggles that I had have helped me elevate to where I needed to be, with some reflection, writing my own lyrics on what I wanted to do.
Yeah, Brigantine Superintendent there. It is a beautiful area, and certainly the school district is good stuff. Let's talk about your role as superintendent, Glenn, and what are some of the things you're focusing on now as we just turned to April, a couple more months here in the Northeast? What are you focused on right now as superintendent?
Yeah, so I think everybody's focus has been AI for quite some time. All right. If you're still working on policy, you are so far behind and hurting your kids and your staff. So time to wake up, get moving, because it's not going away. But yeah, it's budget time for us. We just passed our budget. Now we're moving forward to what's next year. So obviously talking about furniture and so forth. Here's something cool, little tidbit, Andrew. I brought down taxes the last 5 years as a superintendent. Name that being said otherwise. So we have an amazing relationship with our city, our school board, our business administrator is fantastic. We've done that, and it continues to elevate, at the same time elevating our level of programming elevating our level of academics without losing anything. And yet we're able to, work together with the city to bring down taxes for our taxpayers, which is a pretty cool thing to do. But ultimately, what am I always focusing on? Culture and climate, man. Culture and climate and relationships, helping my staff do the best we can possibly do. We've showcased our district over to, just this past year, over 100 plus people.
Wow.
A couple hundred plus people. Last year, we had 87 school districts from all across the country come in here to visit our school, as far away as the state of Washington, come all the way out and so forth. But we build something as a true community school. So how am I going to continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce? How am I going to continue to work with the local entities in our town? And how do I continue focusing on our culture and climate? So here's the cool thing. I appreciate this. Everybody talks about being a culture changer, right? Everybody says, I can come in and change things. I have data for the last 4 years with a HumanX survey company that we use, HumanX Ventures out of Michigan, that work with Fortune 500, NCAA football and basketball programs, and anything you name, as well as hospitals. The average engagement, pride, belief in what the organization is, culture, and climate for a regular business organization and or hospitals is at 33%. Dude, that's scary. You imagine going in, going, you're 1/3 of your people are happy, right? I don't know about you, but when I go to a doctor, I want the happy one, right? Like if he's cutting my knee that day, I want him in a good mood when he's cutting my knee. So think about that from a workforce. Then the average school district is in between 50 to 60% with those pride, engagement, belief in the organization, culture, and climate, where they actually feel like they're getting and they're giving back. 50 to 60%. We've been doing this for 4 years. We started at 77% 4 years ago. Our overall organization right now is at 90%. That is exemplary. We did just a pre-K through 8 teachers in my district, certified and non-certified. They came in at 95%. And it breaks down the data for us. It shows us on what we can continue to do better, what we're simplifying it, and what we can do that, our struggles, a tough reflection. We actually just had a staff meeting yesterday. We brought a representative in. He talked about our scores and, asked people to showcase the great things going on, asked the staff to showcase some things that could be worked on, compiling that and intentionally keep working on that, not only as an administrative team, but as a full staff and as a community. And I share that data out with pride. I haven't, I just recently shared it with the board. I shared it with our staff yesterday. I started putting it on socials. But, as they say, we should be putting that on a flag up top saying, you talk about game changers and culture changers. You actually have the data to prove it. And I have an amazing staff that does that believes and help each other out, when we go through adversity and tough times. Our staff has been phenomenal in wanting to learn more, grow more, and they are so happy to give back to our community and to our kids. So I give such an amazing highlight to them because of the work they do. But it also comes from, like I said, we have an outstanding school board. We have an outstanding city council. We all believe in one thing: what's best for the kids. And when the staff feel that they're in a secure location that's paid well, respected, and so forth, they can do those things. But if they're in a volatile world, where there's a bunch of craziness going on and they're constantly fixated on that instead of actually engaging teaching, like those too. So, happy workplace means a lot to me. And I think that's something I want to continue and always will continue to focus on.
Yeah, Glenn, congratulations. Those are incredible numbers. And again, if you just Google Brigantine School District, you could read some of the articles. Again, it sounds like the business relationships in the community coming in and working in and presenting at the schools is spot on. So good job there, and congratulations. That's great stuff.
Thanks, man. Always do better. Always do better.
Glenn, I know you share, right? I see this stuff on social media. I see the positivity. Have you always been heavily involved in social media, or is it something you kind of learned as you went? Because you are very active, and again, you could see the tags there. You just Google them, you'll find them. But was it something that you always did, Glenn, to be involved in social media as a school leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was an assistant principal, I had like 1 or 2 mentors, but I had no one really else to reach out to, nothing really in the county, nothing in the area. And I jumped on social media. I'm not going to lie here. I jumped on social media. I jumped on X at the time, which was Twitter and Facebook, based on, I was looking for the best travel deals because my wife and I were just together then, so we're looking for discounts, and I was looking for the latest sports highlights, like before it got to ESPN. I wanted to be ahead of the curve. And then I found some great people that just started connecting, and that was the start of Sat Chat back in the day. I'm going back now 12, 14 years ago. And those individuals I became great friends with because they're also from the state of New Jersey. One of them, my co-chair for TechSpo, which is the largest ed tech conference in the state of New Jersey, that used keynote of that. So I built those connections, and then I found like-minded people.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, all right, how do I continue to grow? What are they doing out in California? What are they doing in Iowa? What are they doing in Texas? And it's funny, like when I really got into the thick of it, when I took on a principal job, the parents would come to me like, that's a brilliant idea. Where'd you get it? I'm like, California, or Iowa or Mississippi. I'd own up and say, somebody else's work, we just modified it and made it ours. But I don't know where I'd be right now without the connectivity of social media, meeting so many others across the country, helping to grow. And that was such a lifesaver, especially during the COVID years, going through different webinars and different podcasts and Zooming and hearing what's going on across the country and so forth. So, and social media, to me, I know some people think it's a dumpster fire. It's like anything else. You control your attitude, you control your effort. I look for the good things, and that's what I focus on. So I find those things instead of going down the rabbit hole where the rest of the world continues to do great. So that's where my beliefs are.
Great answer there. And when I met you in New Jersey, I felt like I knew you. Like I felt like I already knew you. Weren't a stranger. I do want to give a shout out to our friend Asael and Ruvalcaba in Texas. I know you've had him up to New Jersey. He's written in your book here. He's written in some of mine. I agree with everything you said about it. And when you look for the good, you certainly find it. So great job leading that. Funny
story about Asael, right? So here's a random guy. I put out a blog post years ago when I was blogging, and I talked about Idea Street, and I totally revamped all of our hallways. We had Lego boards, we had surfboard hallways, we had all this furniture in the hallways, non-typical things that you would see in school back in 2015, 2016. Most of the hallways were just lockers or open. And I worked with the fire marshals, and I started throwing all kinds of things in there. And blog posts went viral because people are like, oh, these are cool ideas. And then this random guy from Texas sends me a DM, man, like, hey, man, I like your work, your great work, and this and that. And then I posted I was going to San Antonio for a workshop to speak. And he hits me up again. He's like, yo, I'm going to drive up, I don't know, it was like 6, 7, 8 hours, and I want to meet you. And I'm like, looked at my wife, I'm like, all right, I love you. I might die on this trip.
New Jersey, Texas.
Yeah. Is this a catfish thing going on? And he comes up, and we linked up, and we talked for hours, my friend, over a couple of drinks, just relaxing and talking about school, talking about education. And then Asael and I became great friends from there and just continued that trajectory up. But just think about that. Just some random dude to hit me up on text that becomes one of my better friends today. Even if he is a Cowboys fan, I'm still his friend.
Speaking of speaking, you also, you speak. You mentioned that you around the country, highlighting great things happening in your community as well as your writing and stuff. Glenn, when you have a keynote speech, you're going to speak to 1,000 people. How do you, number one, mentally prepare, and then number two, focus on the content and the presentation? Talk to me about some great presenting tips that you bring to the table.
You know what? There's a great book that I recently read, and I wish I would have had it much younger. It's called Stand Like Lincoln, Speak Like Churchill.
Wow.
It's all about public speaking, written from an individual who did a bunch of different presidential campaign speakings. And he ties in Churchill and talks about Lincoln and so forth, two different personalities and so forth. But to your point, Andrew, like, you get there early, you survey the room, you obviously ask the question to the people bringing you in, like, who's the audience, why are they there, what are you really hoping I hit home on to, get that message across. And then you treat it like being an athlete. Like, you walk in, like I said, the day before, you practice on the mic here and there if you can, or at least on the podium, to get your practice shots in before anything else. And then the next morning you wake up early, maybe work out a little bit or whatever it may be, get some fresh air, mindfulness, maybe meditate a little. and then go into it like, hey, these people, they're great people. They're working hard, whatever it may be. If they pick up a phone during the conversation of me speaking, I don't take it personally, because in my job, my phone rings all the time, so I focus on what I can control. I can control my message, how I lay it out. To your point, thinking about that, like, how do you lay those messages out and what you're thinking? That's part of repetition. You're talking about the night before, besides practicing at the podium, and then you have your cues that you have written out on your PowerPoint or whatever you're using as your slides or whatever it may be. I use a lot of pictures. It was funny. I recently presented for somebody, and they're like, Glenn, you didn't use any words. You just showed pictures the whole time. And they're like, we actually really enjoyed that, because we weren't focusing on words. We were just focusing on seeing a picture, and you spoke to that. So those pictures, to me, know that that's like my turning point. Like, all right, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is what I was hitting the head of home about. And then ultimately, at the end of it, I ask questions. I reach back out to them and say, how did I do? Did I present the way you hoped I presented? Is there anything you can give me tips to the trade and do so forth and move forward? Sometimes you get some good answers. Sometimes you don't, but you can't be afraid to ask the questions afterwards, right? If you're truly perfecting your craft, it's like anything else. Like, I'm teaching my son right now about basketball, and how like Kobe and Jordan would be in the gyms and working out at obscene hours when no one else was doing that. And it's the same thing. They would also reflect on what they did in that game and how they can get better. And that's part of my tricks in my trade, and then move forward.
If you go to the show notes, friends, or Google Glenn Robbins, his website is there. The website's great, Glenn, and I highly recommend him as a speaker there. And those are great tips. I'm going to get that book, Glenn, for sure.
You'll read it and go, man, I wish I had this earlier. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Now, when you go to places like Texas, and you go to places maybe where they don't sound like us here in the Northeast, do you play up the New Jerseyism? Do you give it a little zing, or do you try to tone it down?
It's hard. Like, so in the Northeast, everybody's like, why do you talk so fast? I'm like, well, if I don't talk, I don't get a word in edgewise, like, it's just, they'll try to say about the slangs here and there. And I call it the South Jersey slang, because I have Philly and New York and me, kind of a deal. But I embrace it. It's who I am, and it's who I've been. And let's be perfectly honest. The Northeast is a cutthroat world, but we're very successful up here when it comes to education. We're very good at what we do and leadership and so forth. So, I'm not going to change that. I did have to change a couple of presentations at one time for the pictures. I remember being flown out to Alaska and speaking out there, and I went to a presentation before mine, and it was a total eye-opener of things I did not even think about, like schools in the bush, like 25 kids or less that you can only fly into out in the middle of nowhere. And here I am talking about revamping their learning spaces and different furniture styles and stuff like that. I'm like, this is not going to work. So I have done that before, where I've crafted that. But as far as the accent and who I am and the talk, I hate to say it, people, but I embrace it.
He won't back down, friends. Absolutely. And again, a great speaker. And I agree with you, Glenn. Glenn, you mentioned your first book with your partner, Danny Bauer, Calm in the Chaos. Yep. And in the education world, really in our country too, there's a lot of chaos. The education department, what's happening? What are some recommendations that you would offer for calm in the education setting, but also in our personal lives? Again, you're a dad and a husband, and it's Friday afternoon. What are some things that you would offer to give calm to what's happening now?
Yeah, so I went through some volatile times and went through some rough times as a leader, and I kept thinking, like, definitely I am not alone in this, and I need to be able to share something out. I'm very big in Stoicism. Very big in philosophy and so forth. Maybe that's because I was just always a history nerd coming up through the years. My grandfather used to say, it's not the problem you have, it's how you handle it. And that always intrigued me, like, where did he hear this? Why did he hear this? And eventually it ties into Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Cato and all them. But here's what I look at, and I highly recommend this. If you're a school leader and you're in the thick of it right now, the school board, or political, or whatever it may be, I highly recommend this, because it breaks down multiple scenarios. So not only I won't back down, but this book does, like, all right, you have to remove a staff member, or you're dealing with an extremely difficult parent, and or you have the heroes of the constituencies that are voted onto board members, and how do you handle them with political different ideologies and so forth. I believe, like I said, with Stoicism, is you can control what you can control. I can control my attitude. I can control who I am, right? But I can't control what a teacher is going to say. I can't control what a board member is going to say. I can't control what the president or the governor or whatever is going to say. I can control what I can control, my attitude, my effort. And I think so many times we get so fixated on like, oh, he triggered me. No, you control you, right? I understand there are things that trigger you sometimes, but when you fire back and you're angry, you just look like a person punching the wind, right? And I'm sorry, I've never had, man, I wish he was, I love him being so angry all the time. I wish he stays angry all the time. Like, come on, man. Like, people need a calm, collective individual leading them through chaotic times. If you're constantly angry or you're constantly beaten down, your staff, your community, your kids, your wife, and your own children are seeing that. And that's why we're going to come to you and say, hey, turn it down, man. Something's wrong. So for me, if the Stoic beliefs, like, Marcus Aurelius, I'll paraphrase, like, be the rock that's unturned as the waves crash over you. I'm sure some days those waves are just tiny little ripples, man. And it's a good day. And other days you got 10 footers coming in and crashing over you. And you can't control that, can you? You can't control what the teacher turn the thermostat on in your classrooms, right? Like, if people try to do that, micromanage and so forth, my ultimate philosophy is, like I said, calm, cool, collective, use philosophy to help you out, ground with that. Be very reflective in your process of who you are as a leader, because people are watching no matter what you do. Set the tone to be in a good district and to lead the way and focus on what you can control, or you can go down that rabbit hole and then people start questioning, why are you posting that on social media? Are you really the right person to be leading my child? We're so interconnected today. We've had teachers across the country who are just going off on political things. And my response is, you need to be very careful. I understand freedom of speech, but it's the same thing in an organization. You can only say certain things. Out there, any person that you work under, any organization, right? And that's not to be school, and or any future employer is going to find it and say, is this the right fit for this person to be in my district? Do they fly off the handle, or do they internalize it, go for runs, mentally prepare for their job? And not I know that's hard for some people to do. It takes time. It takes effort. You got to get punched in the face sometimes, growing up and throughout the ranks, but you got to learn how to take it. And you got to learn how to, take it all in and realize that you can't control what's going on in that person's life while they're so angry at you. You can't control what politics is doing. You can go vote, but you can't control what's going to come out of the governor's mouth or the politician's mouth. You can control you. Sort of like Jimi Hendrix, right? When he's getting booed. He couldn't control the fans booing at him. He couldn't control that was the monkeys that brought him in, and that's the way they wanted him to play. You can control you. So I know that's a long-winded thing, man, but it's just philosophy plays a major part in that. I highly recommend reading Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and so forth, and really diving in on those two. Plutarch on how to be a leader, definitely recommend him. That you could take out some of his words and just put in school, and it hits 2,000 years later. It still resonates. People are people. We think we want to act logically, but guess what? We're always based on emotion. If you can internalize and understand that emotion, you can learn how to change your communication between people more emotionally intelligent. That helps understand. So if I see you like you are right now, you're fine, you're calm, you're cool. But if I see you getting angry, I have to learn how to adapt to that. Like I can't fire back at him, or he's going to get angrier at me. So you learn those along the way. And I think I always laugh, like we say, helicopter parents and sometimes you got to let the kids stay in the sandbox and see the reaction after they do something. If they hurt another kid or vice versa, they need to see the reactions that happen. Like a kid cries or an adult cries or whatever it may be. You made something happen to them. You also quick to yank somebody out and stand up for them instead. So people need to internalize and understand their emotions instead of just firing off.
Good stuff there, Superintendent Glenn Robbins. Our friend Brian McCann, Washington from Massachusetts, here, yeah, a fellow friend there. And Glenn, you mentioned Ryan Holiday too. I love his book. The obstacle is the way, right? And it's dealing with those things and responding. So well said there, Glenn. Anything else you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you?
Not really, Andrew. We went through a lot, man. I appreciate it. I guess what I could ask you, man, is how's life for you, and how are you doing right now in this world that we're in?
How are you doing? People tell me it's spelled wrong. I'm like, nah, not in Jersey. It's
not. No. Hey,
I'm doing great, Glenn. Thank you for asking. Surviving and thriving. I got 18, 16, 13. And I feel blessed to connect with educators, like you said, like-minded people. I was inspired after reading the book. I listened to Tom Petty. It made me more resilient, right? I went into work the next day. I read this, and friends, you could read this in a week. You could read this in a few nights. The stories, Glenn, were great, but I was better the next day, a little more resilient after reading that. So I'm surviving and thriving, man. It's good.
Yeah. So I guess
I'm glad it's a little warmer too.
You know what? You mentioned Tom Petty, you mentioned Hendrix, but did it resonate with you? Do you think it resonated? Like, did you feel like you were having a conversation with me when you were reading this, or did you just feel like, I know you said you lifted up a little bit, or was there something that really hit you that said, all right, I feel good about this book, or I feel good about me now after knowing that Tom Petty got told no, and Jimi Hendrix got booed off the stage? Like, you're a former ref, man. I'm sure you've been booed once or twice.
I connect with a lot of things you said here on the podcast. Our friend Asael jumping in. It was relatable, Glenn. Like, I did feel like I was having a cup of coffee or a beer with you. The relatable. We could all relate to the music. We could all relate to rejection. And then those moments of what do you do, right? What do you do with them? I mean, the story of Elvis. You went from Eazy-E to the Supremes and getting into the racism of what they dealt with, getting into the women of how they dealt with, and even Diana Ross making her own. She had to break away and go do her own thing there. So the book is just relatable.
The Supremes one hit me the most because, look, man, I've been in this job for quite some time, and I've been traveling here and there. And I used to sit in a room with a lot of great people, and there's a lot of great people who are no longer in that room. Whether it was based on their ideas that were just not, what the school board, the new members that came on wanted, and or it was based on their color, their skin, or their beliefs. That they could never fit the agenda that was there for them now. And that's a scary thing for me. And that's why I talked about the Supremes, is how they rose up and overcame all that. Yeah. I think about today's day and age, we need some of these amazing educators who are no longer in the game back in the game, because we're missing out on some greatness. We're missing out on so many great people. And I don't want to name them, but I know they know who they are, and I miss them and I love them because of who they were and what they brought the kids each and every day. So that was why I put the Supremes in, Eazy-E, Wu-Tang, Elvis, Elvis. Imagine if he just followed through and continued being a truck driver, like where would all be, or if Dr. Dre wasn't around to help out, to mentor some people here or there. Imagine if we didn't have our mentors or those people that saw greatness in us and so forth. So, so many things happen in life for a reason. If you understand that, there in every chaos situation, there's always opportunity too. You just have to look for it, and these artists help show that in some areas, that they were resilient, but they saw an opportunity to keep moving forward instead of giving up.
100%. Friends, check it out. The link is in the show notes there. Glenn's newest book. Glenn, let's bring this podcast home. So these are rapid fire questions, Glenn. Quick answers. We are not in traffic on the Jersey Shore. This is going to be a quick thing. Are you ready?
Fire away, my friend.
Here we go. Last movie you saw?
Ooh, the latest Bob Dylan movie. I actually watched it last week. I think Let's watch that.
It was up for an award this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. You're a music guy. Last concert you went to?
Last concert I went to was Shinedown.
Last song you sang out loud in the car?
Oh boy. My son's usually with me, so I can't usually jam out. Wow, that's a great question. You know what? I think it was a Metallica song. I forget which one it was, but it was
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Do you let your son DJ in the car? Is he connecting to the Bluetooth and running the DJ?
Yeah, he is sometimes. His first concert was Metallica. I'm taking him in May to see AC/DC. So, seventh grader, I got to do my job as a dad, give him some culture, man, rock and roll.
Get those earbuds. New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, filled with tremendous restaurants. What's your favorite dish?
Favorite dish? I don't think you can ever go wrong with veal parm or chicken parm.
Nice. Favorite place to travel? You go to a lot of places, Glenn. Favorite place to travel?
Oh, favorite place. I think the all-time favorite place. I've been to Egypt. I've been to Turkey. I've been to everywhere. Been to China, all across the United States, Alaska. I think my favorite was going to Capri, Italy. I went to Naples and then took the hydrojet across to Capri, Italy. I would have been broke if I stayed there another day. It was a cruise ship thing, but it was just beautiful. Going in the Blue Grotto and just going up to the top of the mountains with all the lemons and so forth, and cool people. Yeah.
The limoncello?
Just a little. Just a little.
Yeah, just a little. Beautiful. Brigantine Beach is, fill in the blank.
An awesome beach. Being that, it's not really commercialized. It's one of the few last beaches that you go to that you're just going to the beach. The boardwalk, next town over. Adventure parks, another town over. Brigantine reminds me of childhood. My grandparents took us out of school, go fishing early in the morning. It's just a beach and Mother Nature, man. It's serenity.
And a beautiful school district with a great leader there. In 2025, I will fill in the blank.
Woo! Continue to try to be a great dad and a great husband.
In 2025, I will stop. Fill in the blank.
You know what? Recently, I had a little bit of a health scare. I'm going to slow down a little bit. I think I have to intentionally do that. So I'll stop being dead and start focusing on a little bit better with my health.
Good answer there. You're certainly writing books, doing great things. You're a superhero. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Whew. You know what? I can't show you the back of my laptop that I'm on, but I would be Superman. Born and raised Superman. Can't ever go wrong with him.
If you weren't in education, what field would you be in?
Ooh. All right. So it was either a chef. I love cooking. And or coming up through the years, I wanted to be like Jerry Maguire and a sports agent, man.
Wow. Great. Another great movie there. Good stuff. Glenn, you talked about a lot of passions, the great things that Brigantine, the music. What's a pet peeve of yours?
Pet peeve of mine? I think it would be people that complain. Like, don't just complain. Have a solution. It's so easy to complain. It's harder to do things and make a difference and change that. So that's my pet peeve is, think about it. And what can you do better? How can you make it better? And or if it's not, how do you move on?
I love it. At 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, I am fill in the blank.
Recently playing Barbies with my 5-year-old daughter, watching professional soccer on TV. My son and wife are hoping sleeping a little bit, but it's a lot of dad time on a Saturday morning, 8 a.m.
Beautiful, beautiful. Something about Glenn Robbins that people do not know about.
Great question. I come from a blue collar background. I put that in the book, born and raised a water well driller. So hard manual labor till I was about 23, 25 years old. Made me appreciate what hard work is and what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life.
Nice. Nice shout out to your family there for sure. Glenn, how about a quote to bring us home?
Oh, quote to bring us home. All right, I'll use Prince from the book. All right, I just open up the first page where it is. It was meant to be. despite everything, no one can dictate who you are to other people.
Glenn Robbins, friends, a lot of people here watching live. Please leave Glenn a comment. And again, his newest book is out, I Won't Back Down. It's tremendous. Again, I felt instantly inspired by reading it. So congratulations, Glenn. Thank
you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Google him. His website also is in the show notes. And again, a great speaker, but living the work in the school district there as superintendent. So congratulations, Glenn, and enjoy that family this weekend. And I know you got basketball tonight.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
All right. Keep surviving and thriving, friends. Glenn, stay on the line a second. We're going to sign off here in the podcast. Have a great weekend, everybody.